So it is time for a new video in the Nakshatra series, and this time we're going to be talking about the Nakshatra of Dhanishta in Western and Vedic astrology. And what exactly it means when you have planets in the sign of Dhanishta, or between the 10th and 11th house, on the 10th, 11th house cusp, or between the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. So the obligatory introduction: what is a nakshatra? A nakshatra is the distance that the moon moves in one solar day, 1 24-hour period. The moon proceeds to move roughly 13 1/3 degrees, and then over that time span. And then if you multiply that by 27, you get the 27 nakshatras in the Western astrology system. They're called lunar mansions, and they have a co-ruler. And in the same way that the signs of Scorpio, Pisces, and Aquarius have co-rulers, and other signs, and depending on the system you're using, every 13 1/3 degree section of the ecliptic that the planets move through has a different co-ruler that you can use to hone in the specific nature of your prediction. So if two people have planets in Capricorn, let's say, but one is right at the beginning and one is right at the end, then they're going to be in different nakshatras, they're going to have different co-rulers, and because of that, you're going to see different features in their personality that they're getting from that planet placement. Even though it could be the same planet in the same sign, it could be in a different nakshatra, it could be in a different house. So you have to take into account all these multiple variables in your analysis of the chart. So, with that being said, let's get into the Dhanishta Nakshatra. So, this nakshatra goes from 23 1/3 degrees Capricorn to 6.4 or 6 2/3 degrees Aquarius, and it's co-ruled by Mars. And both of these signs, they're ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is the planet of limitations, it's the planet of boundaries, it's the planet of the material world, it's the planet of delayed gratification. So everything with Saturn, or related to Saturn in your chart, tends to come after 30 years of age. It tends to bring delays. It tends to teach you patience. It wants to teach you patience. That is the purpose of Saturn in your chart. It prevents you from doing things. It tests you. It stresses you. It grows you against these obstacles. That is Saturn's function in astrology. It's considered a malefic planet. This doesn't mean it's not on your side, any more than when you go to the gym and you lift weights. The weights aren't against you. They're an impediment that you are forced to go through to get stronger. They're the medium through which you grow. That's what Saturn represents. Saturn represents time. It represents rules, authority, material laws, social laws, and delays. So it also represents reputation. And because Capricorn represents reputation, and the first house after the sign in particular, so let's say the sign of Taurus, right? The sign of Taurus is the sign of material wealth. It's the sign of food, it's the sign of music, it's the sign of pleasure and valuables. Gemini, the next sign after Taurus, second from Taurus, is the sign of growing your material domain. It's the sign of getting more money, more food, effort, advancement of your wealth. That's why Gemini also represents sales. Like, what does a salesperson do? He takes what he has and generates more value out of it using his communication. That's his function. So, Capricorn, it represents reputation. It represents the social contract through which reputation is received. Aquarius, which is also ruled by Saturn, but also has two co-rulers, which are Uranus and Rahu, or the north node of the moon, the ascending node in Western astrology. Rahu is the Vedic term. Aquarius represents gains in reputation. And that's why Rahu is its co-ruler, is because Rahu is a or north node of the moon, it's an entity that is desirous but is very short-sighted. It wants everything now, doesn't want to wait, and doesn't necessarily care how it gets it. Uranus is a lot like Rahu. Uranus wants the things of Saturn. It wants reputation. It wants material status and wealth. It wants to follow the rules, but it wants to bend the rules. This is why Uranus represents science. It's like, all right, if you take two of these aspects of the material world and you put them together, you get a new thing that's actually more efficient. So the difference between Uranus and Rahu is that they both represent science. They both represent quick ways to reputation, but Uranus will take the time to sit and research and study. It has a longer attention span. It's a slower moving planet than Saturn even. Whereas Rahu wants everything now. It wants, this is why it's represented as a head with no body. It wants to eat everything, to consume all the reputation, all the status, all the attention, and then, and that's it. That's what it wants to do. It can't digest any of it. It doesn't have a body, but it wants to consume everything. Imagine like a chattering, talking skull that is just consuming everything, but everything's just coming out the other end. But it doesn't have the wisdom to know that these material desires are not necessarily, like, it can't keep any of them. So that is the sign of Aquarius, is those three planets. Saturn, delays. Uranus, bending the rules around the delays. Rahu, cheating to get what you want, get your reputation, subvert the delays. So there's a very dissonant sort of, Aquarius people are typically very disquieted because they want everything now, and they are forced to wait, generally. So, this being said, Dhanishta, the nakshatra that spans the end of Capricorn and the beginning of Aquarius, is co-ruled by Mars. And Mars is the planet of willpower. It's the planet of action. It's not necessarily moral action. It's not systematized action, but it's action without judgment. It wants what it wants. It's going to go get it. It wants to win. It wants to compete. It wants to beat the other person. It represents your male friends, competition in the workplace, coworkers, specifically male coworkers, and is also one of the ways that you judge what a woman's attracted to. Wherever her Mars is, she's going to find that sexually attractive. So, this being said, you put the energy of Mars and you put it over the Capricorn side of this. This is fairly straightforward. It is a person who seeks out reputation, who seeks out work, who just wants to do the work. They're basically, they put all their energy into their job and their obligation to society and their weekly routine. That's what that represents. It's pretty straightforward. Mars and Saturn are pretty similar. Mars is the actor. Saturn is the frame which you act in. So you put those two together, you get a worker. That's not too bad. Now, depending on the house placement, things can get more interesting. So, for instance, if you have a Dhanishta placement in your 12th house, you can be working in very interesting fields, like uncovering unknown information. If you put it in the 6th house, you get like a service worker. If you put it in the 4th house, you can get a housekeeper. Somebody who, or you can see somebody here who struggles with stability, especially for the first 30 years of their life. So depending on the house placement, the work that you're doing with that Capricorn Dhanishta placement it can take on different forms. Now, the Aquarius placement, what you really tend to get is a person who is very aggressive in their pursuit of achievement, who works very, very hard to be the best, to be the most knowledgeable, to have the most gains in their career. They're always focused on their personal advancement, and this can be a very good placement, because typically what you are looking for, you tend to get. You tend to get that those goals and those gains. Unfortunately, however, around the time of your mid-20s, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, these people do tend to, especially if the sun is in Dhanishta, in late Dhanishta, these people do tend to get sort of a spiritual wake-up call where they have an experience that is either very traumatic or is very strange, that makes them question the validity of what they're doing. And that can take them a long time to get out of. But this being said, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just these people's lives kind of start off really, really good, and then they sort of they get this decrease in reputation where they become like just curious about figuring out what happened to them. And then toward the end of that, they find out who they are, and they go back up on the other side. So that's more the Aquarius side of Dhanishta. So anyway, that is my analysis of the Dhanishta Nakshatra. And it's basically about reputation, about subverting boundaries and putting all your energy into a particular task and becoming successful and getting the things you want as a result of putting all of your effort and energy into something. So yeah, that's Dhanishta.